She found herself not just reading after a while, but studying, cramming the facts into her head with that particular mental stomp she used when she knew she was going to have to know something by heart. The things the book was telling her now were not vague and abstract, as the initial discussion of theory had been, but straightforward as the repair manual for a new car, and nearly as complex. There were tables and lists of needed resources for working spells. There were formulas and equations and rules. There was a syllabary and pronunciation guide for the 418 symbols used in the wizardly speech to describe relationships and effects that other human languages had no specific words for. The information went on and on. The book was printed small, and there seemed no end to the things Nita was going to have to know about. She read about the hierarchy of practicing wizards. Her book listed only those practicing in the U.S. and Canada, though wizards were working everywhere in the world. And she scanned down the listing for the New York area, noticing the presence of advisory wizards, area supervisors, senior wizards. She read through a list of the other worlds closest to her own, alternate Earths, where the capital of the United States was named Huitzilopochtli, or Lafayette City, or Raffenkel, or New Washington, and where the people still called themselves Americans, though they didn't match Nita's ideas about the term. She learned the horseman's word, which gets the attention of any member of the genus Equus, even the zebras, and the two forms of the mason's word, which gives stone the appearance of life for short periods. One chapter told her about the magical creatures living in cities, whose presence even the non-wizardly people suspected sometimes. Creatures like the steam-breathing fireworms, pack-ratty little lizards that creep through cracks in building walls to steal treasures and trash for their lair hoards under the streets. Nita thought about all the steam she had seen coming up from manhole covers in Manhattan, and smiled, for now she knew what was causing it. She read on, finding out how to bridle the nightmare, and learning what questions to ask the transcendent pig, should she meet him. She read about the trees battle, who fought in it, who won it, and why. She read about the 40 basic classes of spells and their subclasses. She read about Time Heart, the unreal and eternal realm where the places and things people remember affectionately are preserved as they remember them, forever. In the middle of the description of things preserved in their fullest beauty forever and still growing, Nita found herself feeling a faint tingle of unease. She was also getting tired. She dropped the book in her lap with an annoyed sigh, for there was just too much to absorb at one sitting, and she had no clear idea of where to begin. "Crud," she said under her breath. "I thought I'd be able to make Joanne vanish by tomorrow morning." Nita picked the manual up again and leafed through it to the section labeled Preliminary Exercises. The first one was set in a small block of type in the middle of an otherwise empty page. To change something, you must first describe it. To describe something, you must first see it. Hold still in one place for as long as it takes to see something. Nita felt puzzled and slightly annoyed. This didn't sound much like magic. But obediently she put the book down, settled herself more comfortably against the tree, folded her arms, and sighed. It's almost too warm to think about anything serious. What should I look at? That rock over there? Nah, it's kind of a dull-looking rock. That weed. Look how its leaves go up around the stem in a spiral. Nita leaned her head back, stared up through the crabtree's branches. That rotten Joanne. Where would she have hidden that pen, I wonder? Maybe if I could sneak into her house somehow. Maybe there's a spell for that. Have to do it after dark, I guess. Maybe I could do it tonight. Wish it didn't take so long to get dark this time of year. Nita looked at the sky where it showed between the leaves, a hot blue mosaic of light with here and there the fire flicker of sun showing through, shifting with the shift of leaves in the wind. There are kinds of patterns. The wind never goes through the same way twice, and there are patterns in the branches, but they're never quite the same either. And look at the changes in the brightness. The sky is the same, but the leaves cover sometimes more and sometimes less. The patterns, they... They won't let you have a moment's rest, the crabapple tree said irritably. Nita jumped, scraping her back against the trunk as she sat up straight. She had heard the tree quite plainly, in some way that had nothing to do with spoken words. It was light patterns she had heard, and wind movements, leaf rustle, fire flicker. "Finally paid attention, did you?" said the tree. "As if one of them isn't enough, messing up someone's fallen leaf pattern that's been in progress for 15 years, drawing circles all over the ground and messing up the matrices. Well, what's your excuse?" Nita sat there with her mouth open, looking up at the words the tree was making with cranky light and shadow. "It works. It works!" She said, not knowing whether the tree could understand her. "I didn't draw any circles on your leaves." "No, but that other one did," the tree said. "Made circles and stars and diagrams all over Teleralark's collage, doing some kind of power spell. You people don't have the proper respect for artwork." "Okay, so we're amateurs," it added, a touch of belligerence creeping into its voice. "So none of us have been here more than 30 years. Well, our work is still valid, and—" Listen, do you mean that there's a wizard out here somewhere doing magic?" "What else?" the tree snapped. "And let me tell you, if you people don't—" Where is she?" "He," the tree said. "In the middle of all those made stone roads. I remember when those roads went in, and they took a pattern Kimber had been working on for 80 years and scraped it bare and poured that black rock over it. One of the most complex, most—" "He?" Nita thought, and her heart sank slightly. She had trouble talking to boys. "You mean across the freeway? In the middle of the interchange? That green place?" "Didn't you hear me? Are you deaf?" Silly question. That other one must be deaf not to have heard Teleri yelling at him. And now I suppose you'll start scratching up the ground and invoking powers and ruining my collage. Well, let me tell you. Listen, I'll talk to you later, Nita said hurriedly. She got to her feet, brushed herself off, and started away through the woods at a trot. Another wizard? And my God, the trees! Their laughter at her amazement was all around her as she ran, the merriment of everything from foot-high weeds to 100-foot oaks rustling in the wind, grave chuckling of maples and alders, titters from groves of sapling sassafras, silly giggling in the raspberry bushes, a huge belly laugh from the oldest hollow ash tree before the freeway interchange. How could I never have heard them before? Nita stopped at the freeway's edge and made sure that there were no cars coming before she tried to cross. The interchange was a cloverleaf, and the circle formed by one of the off-ramps held a stand of the original pre-freeway trees within it, in a kind of sunken bowl. Nita dashed across the concrete and stood a moment, breathless, at the edge of the downslope, before starting down it slantwise. This was another of her secret places, a spot shaded and peaceful in summer and winter both because of the pine trees that roofed in the hollow. But there was nothing peaceful about it today. Something was in the air, and the trees, irritated, were muttering among themselves. Even on a foot-thick cushion of pine needles, Nita's feet seemed to be making too much noise. She tried to walk softly, and wished the trees wouldn't stare at her so. Where the slope bottomed out, she stopped, looking around her nervously, and that was when she saw him. The boy was holding a stick in one hand and staring intently at the ground underneath a huge larch on one side of the grove. He was shorter than she was, and looked younger, and he also looked familiar somehow. Now who is that, she thought, feeling more nervous still. No one had ever been in one of her secret places when she came there. But the boy just kept frowning at the ground, as if it were a test paper and he was trying to scowl the right answer out of it. A very ordinary-looking kid, with straight black hair and a Hispanic look to his face, wearing a beat-up green windbreaker and jeans and sneakers, holding a willow wand of a type that Nita's book recommended for certain types of spelling. He let out what looked like a breath of irritation and put his hands on his hips. "Goodness," he muttered, shaking his head, and halfway through the shake, he caught sight of Nita. He looked surprised and embarrassed for a moment. Then his face steadied down to a simple, worried look. There he stood, regarding Nita, and she realized with a shock that he wasn't going to yell at her, or chase her, or call her names, or run away himself. He was going to let her explain herself. Nita was amazed. It didn't seem quite normal. "Hi," she said. The boy looked at her uncertainly, as if trying to place her. "Hi." Nita wasn't quite sure where to begin, but the marks on the ground and the willow wand seemed to confirm that a power spell was in progress. She said, I don't see the oak leaves, or the string." The boy's dark eyes widened. "So that's how you got through." "Through what?" "I put a binding spell around the edges of this place," he said. "I've tried this spell once or twice before, but people kept showing up just as I was getting busy, and I couldn't finish." Nita suddenly recognized him. "You're the one they were calling crazy last week." The boy's eyes narrowed again. He looked annoyed. Yeah, a couple of the 8th graders found me last Monday. They were shooting up the woods with BB guns, and there I was, working, and they couldn't figure out what I was doing, so at lunch the next day they said, I know what they said." It had been a badly rhymed song about the kid who played by himself in the woods because no one else would play with him. She remembered feeling vaguely sorry for the kid, whoever he was. Boys could be as bad as girls sometimes. "I thought I blew the binding, too," he said. "You surprised me." "Maybe you can't bind another wizard out," Nita said. That was it, she thought. If he's not one... I guess not. He paused. "I'm Kit," he said then. "Christopher, really, but I hate Christopher." "Nita," she said. "It's short for Juanita. I hate that, too. Listen, the trees are mad at you." Kit stared at her. "The trees?" Mostly this one." She looked up into the branches of the larch, which were trembling with more force than the wind could lend them. "See, the trees do... I don't know, it's artwork, sort of, with their fallen leaves. And you started doing your power schematic all over their work, and, Trees?" Kit said. "Rocks I knew about. I talked to a rock last week. Or it talked to me, actually, though it wasn't talking really." He looked up at the tree. "Well, hey, I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't know. I'll try to put things back the way I found them. But I might as well not have bothered with the spell," he said, looking again at Nita. "It got caught. It's not working. You know anything about this?" He gestured at the diagram he had drawn on the cleared ground, and Nita went to crouch down by it. The pattern was one she had seen in her book, a basic design of interlocking circles and woven parallelograms. There were symbols drawn inside the angles and outside the curves, some of them letters or words in the Roman alphabet, some of them the graceful characters of the wizardly speech. "I just got my book yesterday," she said. "I doubt I'll be much help. What were you trying to get? The power part of it I can see." She glanced up and found Kit looking with somber interest at her black eye. "I'm getting tired of being beat up just because I have a Spanish accent," he said. "I was going to attract enough power to me so that the big kids would just leave me alone and not start anything. An aura, the book called it. But the spell got stuck a couple of steps in, and when I checked the book, it said that I was missing an element." He looked questioningly at Nita. "Maybe you're it?" She shook her head. "I don't know. I was looking for a spell for something different. Someone beat me up and stole my best pen. It was a space pen, the kind the astronauts have, and it writes on anything. And I always took all my tests with it, and I always pass when I use it, and I want it back." She stopped, then added, "And I guess I wouldn't mind if they didn't beat me up anymore, either." "We could make a finding spell and tie it into this one," Kit said. "Yeah? Well, we better put these needles back first." "Yeah." Kit stuck the willow wand in his back pocket as he and Nita worked to push the larch's needles back over the cleared ground. "Where'd you get your book?" Nita said. "In the city, about a month ago.